This is the Tyler Morgan Show on Relentless Dairy Media Network.
Welcome to the land of bourbon and bad decisions, where the nights are long and the truth cuts deep. Voices rise against the tide with clear intentions in a place where freedom never sleeps. Echoes of the past in the halls of tomorrow. The light will chase away the whispers of sorrow. Stand tall, never bow, the fight's just beginning. With every word, the fire keeps on spinning. After all, you got a message for the nation. Raising up the flag with no hesitation. Through the storm, the fire burns bright. On the edge of reason, we defend our rights. Whoa.
Welcome back to the land of bourbon and bad decisions. This is the Tyler Morgan Show. Not live on twitch.tv/Tyler Morgan Show as usual. Getting at this about an hour and a half later than I normally do because, it's been busy and, me and the wife want to have some time together before she goes off to bed and I jump on the interwebs and start recording the show. So instead of a live stream, this is just a standard YouTube and podcast recording. So thank you for joining me on either of those platforms and generally on twitch.tv/Tyler Morgan. If you're following me, if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, all the things that helps direct more people to watching the show. If you are listening to this on podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, again, to help the algorithm direct people to the shoe. So again, before I get started, let me talk to you about coffee. Yes, coffee, the beverage that many of us drink in the mornings and throughout the day to keep us going. And my favorite coffee comes from American Pride Roasters, aprcoffee.com. There you'll find an amazing selection of, custom roasted coffees and ground to order. That way, if you're a person who likes whole beans and you have your own grinder at home, you can get whole beans and grind them at home. If you're like me and you don't want to go through that process, you can be like, hey, I like a good medium grind coffee because it works perfect in my drip coffee maker or my Keurig with the replaceable cup or reusable cup that goes in it, or French press. Maybe you have an espresso machine. You can get a fine grind to perfectly work with your espresso machines, however you want to do it. They will grind it. And it has so many great flavors. I am a flavored coffee kind of guy. So that's what I tend to go with. The Teddy Roosevelt, the Frederick Douglass, the Thomas Paine Age of Reason remix. These are my personal favorite flavors. Check them out today. American Pride Roasters, aprcoffee.com. Historically great coffee. All right. So go fast boats and gun rights. Well, the interwebs have been all a flurry over the last several days because of things. Those things being the United States Navy, with the use of a Reaper drone with Hellfire missiles, took out a Venezuelan go-fast boat hauling illicit drugs from Venezuela to a Caribbean island that was unknown because it was 40 some odd miles off the coast of Venezuela in international waters. And the right is like, oh my God, we're doing something about the drug smugglers. We're blowing them out of the seas. The left is, this is a war crime because do we know the 11 people on that boat were actually Trinidad Aragua the drug smugglers? And is it possible they were just fishermen? Well, maybe they were just fishermen who had giant bales of something that were not fish. and they were 40 miles off the coast in a small craft. I don't think you have a bunch of bales of nothing that you're using to help catch fish that these smaller boats would more than likely be netting off the coast of Venezuela. And on top of it, this people freaking out. Well, we don't know. It's like, okay, if you're going to be authorizing a strike like this, your evidence needs to be 100% airtight. And for it to be 100% airtight, you're looking at multiple levels of intelligence. You're going to be looking at human intelligence sources saying, hey, around this area of Venezuela, they're going to be loading up boats with drugs to run to wherever, whether it be Haiti, Puerto Rico, Cuba, you name it, somewhere in the Caribbean, that's where it's going. Okay. But you just can't go off of a single source. Single source intelligence is usually bad intelligence. You need to corroborate it. Maybe you have a second human source that says, hey, on this day at this time, we're going to be there's going to be Trinde Aragua loading boats with illegal drugs to ship off. Like, okay, we have a second person, and on top of it, they gave us a date when it's happening. And I'm going to guess that you have wonderful folks at, NSA, CIA, who are running SIGINT, signals intelligence, who are running phone traces, who are running phone intercepts. Pardon me. My allergies have been acting up really bad for the last couple of weeks, so I apologize. So you're going to have, some sort of technical aspect going on to try to capture cell phone calls from the smugglers and their suppliers. And they happen to get a phone trap that has, hey, on this day at this time we're going to be loading up a boat at this location, and it's going to go to that location. It's going to be leaving at such and such time. So now we have two corroborating human sources, and then we have a third SIGINT source that not only corroborates the two human intelligence sources, but it gives us more time that it also verifies, hey, yeah, the second source that said on this day is when they're loading it, and the SIGINT source says, oh, yep, it's loading on this day, it's leaving from here. So here's what happens. You get ISR assets, and you start having them recon the area, and hello, here is a boat with a 4 large outboard motors, so that way it can skedaddle across the water as quick as possible. And it's on a beach. It's not at a pier. It's not at a wharf. You have trucks coming up to it. Okay. We're watching. Okay. They're loading these big bales of what could be drugs, or more likely drugs, because of the previous intelligence that was cited. It's getting loaded. Okay. And at such time, it leaves, takes off, and it gets in international waters. Now, I know the same people who justify droning Anwar al-Awlaki and then his son a couple weeks later, both U.S. citizens, I might add, even though they were, you know, offering material support to terrorists, instead of, capturing them, bringing them back to the United States so that they could face due process, they were summarily executed by the Obama administration. So now but the same people who are perfectly fine with that are losing their ever freaking minds over 11 drug dealers, 11 drug smugglers who were blown out of the water, international waters. They weren't in the territorial waters of Venezuela. They weren't in the territorial waters of a third party nation. They were in open seas. Now, keep in mind, Tren de Aragua has been designated a narco terrorist organization. Well, the people on that boat were civilians. Well, I don't know if you know how terrorists work, but very seldom are they uniformed members of a national military. They are usually civilians. And so the Navy and the Air Force and whoever else was involved operating under the authorization for the use of military force that essentially declared a war on terror, wherever it may be, wherever it may pop up its ugly head, we're going to go after them. So you have designated terrorists in international waters who are trafficking a substance that the sale of which will be used to fund narco terrorist activities. It got blown up. How was it different than when we were in Afghanistan going, holy crap, look at this whole field of poppies? I have a cure for that. Thermite, thermite. You get some thermite. You get some thermite. Everyone gets thermite. And then the poppies burn to the ground. You burn the poppies to the ground. Guess what? Haqqanis, Al Qaeda, uh, ISIS K. None of them are getting poppies to harvest for the opium, which they will turn around and sell to fund their activities. Now, and I get my inner libertarian does have some issues with how this went down. Because obviously for, sources and methods, it will never 100% be confirmed that my theory on how this boat was targeted, how the target package was drawn up, and then we know it was executed with a Reaper drone and Hellfire. So we know this happens. So we know that happened. It'll never 100% be confirmed. This is just my theory. And honestly, now I'm not big on the whole war on drugs thing because the war on drugs here in the States has not worked. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been some people who, because the drug trade is so lucrative, they have done some very illegal things to maintain their grasp on the drug trade. That's the reason why groups like or people like El Chapo and these other Mexican cartel leaders. So the reason why, oh dang it, the guy from headed up the Medellin cartel in Colombia, Pablo Escobar. That's the reason why these guys got so powerful. Was because the amount of money people are willing to pay for that product. And we've essentially created a black market. Because that's what happens whenever you have any sort of prohibition, you just create a black market, the sales of which go under the table. They're unregulated, and it falls into the hands of rather unscrupulous people. Now, and I'm also not saying that, we should just allow unfettered access to our shores with things like illegal fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana. I'm kind of hit or miss on marijuana. I know there's people I know people who do use it, and they use it for legit reasons, whether it's you know, to help with a behavioral health issue, to help with a physical health issue. There's a million one reasons to use it medically. There's even more reasons that people want to use it socially, recreationally, what have you. But these hard drugs are incredibly damaging to society. I mean, you can walk through major cities and you can just find people literally just kind of like nod off in the middle of whatever they're doing, and they completely give up their entire lives to feed this addiction. And a lot of people will blame big pharma. Well, big pharma pushing these opioids, and people have to get it, cheaper opioids, whether it's a heroin or whatever off the streets. Hell, yes and no. I mean, we had completely unregulated use of, you know, opium in the form of laudanum, which, hey, if you want to get drunk off your ass while high as a kite without having to smoke opium, drink the laudanum. We had stuff like that. Civil War and the invention of the hypodermic needle and the use of heroin, or was heroin involved in, or morphine, the use of morphine, excuse me. Morphine came first, then heroin. And the use of morphine that could be directly injected into the veins of wounded soldiers created massive epidemic and massive addiction issues post Civil War. And then you have the, bring in the Chinese for the, building the railroads from the West, and they would bring their tradition of opium dens and opium smoking with them. And that further fed into the early addiction issues in America. But this whole idea that only one party is responsible for the addiction crisis in America, and that being big pharma, is not exactly accurate. And you have people who they get addicted to, you know, opiates and opioids without ever having been prescribed it. They Not everyone who becomes a heroin junkie started by using, prescription pills. But it's but yeah, like I said, you have these boats that if we're going to just, label these groups as narco terrorists, and if we have a chance to kill or capture, and we don't have a boat close enough to be able to intercept because of the speed that they're running, and you can just as easily blow it out of the water with a Reaper and a Hellfire. I'm kind of for it, because Trinidad and Aragua, while they're not the main supplier of the incredibly toxic and lethal opioid fentanyl, they are a big contributor to it in the United States, because they can get the same precursors from China delivered to them. They can then combine the precursors to create the fentanyl, dry it, powder it up, bale it up, and ship it off and get it to the United States just as easily as the Mexican cartels can. And so if we can stop it before it gets here, I'm for it. And I'm sure the Navy would have rather had a ship in place that they could have gotten, you know, their own go fast boats that could have intercepted them, get them in the water, take them down. But these things aren't always feasible. The Krasensteins have just been absolutely unbearable, as they usually are, calling Donald Trump and JD Vance war criminals. Well, rules of engagement exist for a reason. Those rules of engagement are to prevent people from committing war crimes. And again, I am willing to bet money, all like 30 cents of it that I have, that again, there were multiple layers of intelligence guiding them on into targeting this boat for either capture or destruction. There were eyes on via ISR assets the entire time. I did find one thing with the AI on Google. It said the area where this boat was launched from had been watched for several weeks with ISR assets. Whether that's getting one drone in the air and before it hits bingo and has to return to base for refueling, recharging, however it's powered, they get a second on site to take over the duties of keeping an eye on everything while that one returns. So, so multiple weeks of observation. They see the drugs getting loaded via the ISR asset. It takes off, it gets to international waters. No Navy vessel is close enough to be able to either outright detain it or to get their own fast moving boats to go after it and detain them. Which, again, if you do that, you're putting sailors at risk because if it's armed, they're going to defend it. Because is that watercraft riding low in the surf? Is that another go fast boat from another organization that's going to try to hijack our load and take our product? Is it military or law enforcement in international waters trying to seize this load and put us in jail? Because more than likely, like I said, they're going to shoot. They will defend that load. So it is my opinion that based on my knowledge of how we put together target packages for the military and understanding what rules of engagement are, that no, a war crime was not committed. It is my belief that things were done by the book in accordance with an authorization to use military force, that the use of this AUMF is probably really, really, really being stretched to its maximum use, that the military was right to do what they did. But then again, you do have the people on the left who, like I said, these are the same people who defend the droning of Anwar al-Awlaki and his son. Because, well, they were in Yemen and they were providing material support for terrorists. Yes, I understand this. However, when John Walker Lind was picked up on the battlefield in Afghanistan, did we just summarily execute him because he was fighting with the enemy? They really can't answer that. They just go back to, well, he was a terrorist, and again, so was John Walker Lind. There's a reason why the Northern Alliance had him in that prison. Because he was a radicalized Muslim who was there serving as Mujahideen with Al Qaeda. The Northern Alliance picked him up. He wasn't just some American backpacker who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the Northern Alliance said, "We don't like you. You're going to the Huskow." He was an active participant in the jailbreak that was occurring when 5th Special Forces Group showed up and popped him. He was not summarily executed. He was captured because they had the ability to. Whereas Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, U.S. citizens that could have been captured through a covert operation and brought back to the United States to face trial for providing material support to a terrorist organization, and had the opportunity to be found guilty and found guilty by a jury of his peers, sentenced by an American judge, and do his time. They weren't. And the left defends the droning of them. But then, like I said, they turn around with another declared terrorist organization, and suddenly drug cartels are something worth defending. Stinking donkulous. But on to other things. So, like I said, the last few weeks I've been working on another project that, while it does take me away from doing the podcast on occasion, I'm trying to build from scratch. And because I love things that are built from scratch. You know, like I said, APR Coffee, his original roasters were hand built by him. There is a certain pride that goes into something hand built, whether it is completely just flawless or whether you can go, okay, I can see some small flaws in here, but it gives the product character. Hand built is amazing. And so I've been getting into hat building. I don't have any of the hats I've been working on or have done with me right now. But if you go to youtube.com/ at show me hat co, ShowMehatco, youtube.com/ at show me hat co, you can start to see some of the stuff I've been doing. I do have a short up there with a hat that I've been working on for my friend Carol. She has asked me to build her a fedora. And so I kind of go into that and talk about it a little bit. I love doing stuff with my hands. My hands are just all rough and calloused. You know, I have a pinky that does its own thing on my right hand because I was dumb and broke the hand. But being able to put effort into building something by hand is absolutely amazing. You see people who have homes that just aren't, made with prefab walls, prefab trusses, but they're built by true craftsmen, the masters of measure twice, cut once. They don't they don't have lumber that just goes through a machine that laser measures, cuts it onto the next piece, goes to a framing area that lays out the lays out the walls, automatic nails it together. These are guys out there with nail guns, hammer and nails, screw guns. You know, and you can tell the love that goes into these homes. Just like you can see the effort that goes into the hats that I'm trying to build. Check out that on YouTube. Check out my Facebook page, you know, facebook.com/, show me hat co. And if you're interested in getting a, you know, hand built felt hat, hit me up, message me on that, comment on the short on YouTube, check it out, and see what I can do for you. It's projects I have, coming up. My dad has gotten into the show Longmire, and he loves Walt Longmire's hat. So that's probably my next project. Little beaver felt, put that together for him. Yep. I said, this is just cool. It's a lost art. I mean, if you find videos on YouTube of these of guys building hats who've been doing it for way longer than I have. I've been doing it for like 2 months, and just see the effort they put into it and how amazing these hats are. And I'm not going to be doing these, really fancy bespoke hats with like the skulls, crafted into the crowns of them. I'm a traditionalist, bro. You know, my first hat was a cowboy hat. My second hat was a fedora. Carol's hat that I'm working on, it's a fedora. My dad's is a cowboy hat. My daughter wants a fedora. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I like. Because same reason I'm here enjoying scotch, because it's all about the classics, man. Nothing crazy, just good old fashioned hat. I'll try to get some other stuff built because I wanted to get more video up of doing this, so it's kind of help support. Check it out. Show me Hat Co. Means a lot. All right, so getting into the gun rights debate yet again. As you know, in the last week there was a horrible mass shooting in Minneapolis. There was a trans person boarded up the doors of a church at a Catholic school and started shooting at students from outside, killing two, wounding many, before taking his own life. Yes, I said his. I'm not going to give this freak the pleasure of posthumously recognizing his chosen gender. And so the big things come up where, well, we've had all these LGBT mass shootings in the past several years. Maybe we should be taking guns from trannies. Well, I can't say that I agree with that. And it's for the same reason that I don't think gun control should be applied to the 99% of gun owners who do not commit criminal actions with their firearms. Now, they can make the argument that, well, I mean, that the mentally the mentally ill haven't been allowed to own guns for years. It's like, well, no. That is a mischaracterization of the law. If you have been found mentally deficient, mentally incompetent by a judge, then you lose your right to own firearms because you are potentially a danger to yourself or society. That is a huge difference to someone who's like, I was born in the wrong body. I'm really a girl. I was born in the wrong body. I'm really a man. Now, I do believe that those are mental health issues. And the science shows that many people who suffer from gender dysphoria and end up becoming a transsexual person or a transgendered person, they have other mental health issues that are, that complicate the issues. And yeah, I don't want to be a callous person who's just like, I just lock them up. Because I believe it is a legitimate mental health issue. I believe they should be dealt with compassionately. I know there's a lot of conservatives who are going to hear that and say, "What?" I'm a person with mental health issues. I have post traumatic stress disorder. I have chronic depression. I can empathize with a person whose brain and body are not in sync, whose mental state is not is about half a bubble off a plum. Because I've been there. I know what it's like when, you know, I have memories of from Afghanistan that cause a physical reaction in my body that I know is not normal, but I cannot stop the reaction. I have to just get through it. And it breaks me down and makes me an emotional wreck. I get what it's like to completely lose interest in everything around you and to begin detaching from your wife, your kids, your pets, and you're just kind of I know what it's like to be suicidal. I know that's a scary word. I know what it's like when you hear a voice in your head when you're going through a incredibly bad time that is completely cold and calculated and void of emotion say, you know what? It would be a really good idea to take one of those guns and put in your mouth and end it. I also, and to be mentally aware enough of what's going through your mind that it breaks you emotionally. And it is the scariest freaking thing you've ever lived through in your life. And this is coming from someone who's been shot at in a war zone. I can fully empathize with a person who is transgender, transsexual, suffers from the gender dysphoria. Do I think someone like that should be banned from owning a gun? No, because I have my own mental health issues that I am 100% honest with. And I am 100% honest about. And right around the corner from me is a gun safe that has 3 pistols, an AR-15, a deer rifle, and a shotgun. I can own firearms and not be a threat to myself. I can own firearms and not be a threat to others. If I was exhibiting behavior that made me a clear and present threat to myself or others, and my wife felt that, oh my gosh, my husband needs to be hauled off for intensive inpatient therapy because he is exhibiting signs that he could hurt me or someone else, hurt me or himself or someone else. Okay, cool. Have me committed, declared incompetent, and have my guns removed. But just having depression, just having PTSD that are both managed, that's no reason to take my guns. John, who thinks he should be Jane, shouldn't have his guns taken away. Jane, who thinks she should be John, should not lose the right to be able to defend herself because she has a mental defect. There are thousands upon thousands of trans people who are of no threat to anyone around them. There are people with schizoid type personalities and bipolar disorder that are very aware of their limitations, very aware of their illness, and they stay on top of meds. Just because they get to feeling better, they don't stop taking them because they know if they stop taking them, they're either going to go and completely manic, they're going to go completely depressive. They know they know hallucinations will pop up that could tell them to hurt themselves or someone else, and they don't want that. If they have a mental illness that is 100% controlled and they stay on top of it, they shouldn't lose their right to be able to defend themselves or to defend others. I feel very, very personal on that one because of my own issues. But like I said, it is currently a movement on the right. And the left just goes, it's a start. See, you're coming around to our side of the argument. We give an inch on the right, they take a mile. They use it as a precedent for something else. Me, I am the full restored citizenship guy when it comes to felons. If you committed a white collar felony, why, once you complete your sentence, are you still restricted from voting in most places? Why can you not carry a firearm anymore? Now, if you're convicted of a violent crime, an assault, battery, an attempted murder, armed robbery, something like that, where you have shown that you are capable of antisocial behaviors where you're going to have a gun, where having a gun is going to make it easier for you to commit a crime. Yeah, by all means, you don't get that one back. You lost it. But I do believe, and even with certain cases, I think that, you know, on a case by case basis, you could say, okay, oh, vehicular homicide. What are the circumstances? What does your criminal record look like before that happened? Okay, there's a case that can be made that for you, you can have your gun rights restored. That's where I'm at. I believe we should all have a nuclear bomb in the basement just in case we really need to screw some people over and, you know, in the name of defending ourselves. I know the federal government's not going to like that. Hi, Tim at the NSA. I'm glad you're listening to the show. But yeah, we can point to like 4 mass shootings where the offender was trans. But the left is using that to make the same argument that cisgender white men shouldn't have guns because the majority of mass shootings have been carried out by cisgendered white males. Why would we even entertain anything that would give precedent to the left to use against freedom loving Americans? Because there are people who are Democrats who they're gun people too. We might not agree on policy prescriptions, but hey, you love the ability to defend yourself and your family. I love the ability to defend myself and my family. We have that in common. Why would we screw each other over? Why would we give the left anything that they can use as leverage against guns? It's the dumbest freaking thing ever. The idea that, well, in this case, well, no. Just because it fits a narrative doesn't mean we need to act on it. To quote Penn Jillette, okay, maybe not a quote, because I don't have that episode of bullshit readily available. But to paraphrase Penn Jillette, many times when people say there ought to be a law, there oughtn't. We don't need more restrictions on guns. We need less restrictions on people being able to carry guns in public places. Because those times when there has been a good guy with a gun, because they can carry in those public places, they put them to into damn good use. They've stopped things. They've prevented bad guys from getting away. They have stopped mass shootings before they can get started with more than 1 or 2 victims. Is a good guy with a gun always available? No. I know lots of people who carry who they would not involve themselves in a situation like that. But if they're with their wife and kids and the fight is brought to them and they do not have a choice, they will throw down, but they will not run to a gunfight. And that's fine. I'm not asking everyone who concealed carries or open carries to be willing to put your life on the line because you have that gun on your hip. But there will be someone who is willing to if they're able. And I would say make it as easy for the people who are willing to do that as possible. Eliminate gun-free zones. Make conceal carry the law of the land. In many places where concealed carry has passed, despite the idea that, oh, it's going to be the wild, wild west. That evidence just has not borne out. In many places, when concealed carry is implemented, gun crime goes down in most of the state. Gun crime stays the same in those parts of the state that have massive amounts of gun crime as it is. Yep. Concealed carry passes in Missouri. Rural Missouri gun crime goes down. St. Louis and Kansas City, it stays about the same. It's because the people who are already committing most of the gun crime, they're already carrying concealed. You didn't change anything for them. You just made it easier for law-abiding citizens to do the same. And many of those people who are committing gun crimes are repeat offenders, usually with felony convictions. So then when they get arrested again, they catch a federal gun crime charge because they're a felon in possession of a firearm. It's almost like banning guns for certain people doesn't work because they carry anyways. And I would tell anyone who is told that they can't have a gun, screw them. Your life is far more important to me than telling you that you cannot carry a gun. Because someone in your demographic group was a retard and they did something horrific. So, no, don't ban transsexual, transgender people from owning firearms because you had that dumb broad in Nashville, that idiot in uh, Minneapolis, the moron in Aberdeen, Maryland, and the dude in Philly, or the non-binary people in Perry, Iowa, or Colorado Springs. Don't restrict other people's rights who are law-abiding citizens because you're making the same argument and the same points the left does about you and me. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this show. Again, sorry if you were hoping to catch this on Twitch and you didn't. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, again, please be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all the things, comment, like, share, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. If you're a podcast follower or podcast listeners, check it out. Same four things every week. Number one, please subscribe to the podcast. After you subscribe, please rate it. Looking for 5 stars. I will accept 4, 3, and below. Hit me up in my DMs on the Twitters at Fake Tyler Morgan. And explain to me why you felt you need to give me 3 stars or less. Constructive criticism helps me make the show better. But if you say mean things, I will probably make fun of you. Once you have subscribed and rated, please review the show. Say something nice about it. That way, as other people discover it, I might like this. I might like this podcast. What do people say in the reviews? You can, fluff it a little bit, but please don't get carried away. If you're going to say something not nice, be pithy, be clever. Best of all, be funny. If you're funny, I can kind of let it go. I might chuckle about it on if I were to read it on the show. But if you're just a jerk, I'm going to make fun of you. That's just how I am. Once you have subscribed, rated, and reviewed, please share the podcast. Send it to somebody you think will enjoy it. Send this episode to somebody you think it will piss them off. I am ready to do your work to make your liberal friends upset. It's how I roll. Again, thank you so much for listening. And as always, I got to reach way over here. Stay relentless. The Tyler Morgan Show is a relentless daring media production. The Tyler Morgan Show is supported by its listeners. To support the show, go to ko-fi.com/Tyler Morgan Show to donate there, or relentlessdaring.com and hit the donate button at the top of the page to set up your donation. All music used in the Tyler Morgan Show is used with permission from purpleplanet.com, link in the show notes. 2 Timothy 1:7.